Born on March 11, 1933, Fermín Delgado Pinto lived a relatively humble life, working the fields of his native Peru. No one had a single negative thing to say about Fermín. Throughout his long life, he was never described as anything other than a very friendly man who valued his family above all else. Growing up near a coastal city in Peru, Fermín also had a fondness for the beach and fishing. Even in his old age, Fermín remained cheerful and independent. He enjoyed taking long walks on his own, sometimes for hours on end, but he would always find his way back home safe and sound without any assistance, showing that he remained as sharp as ever. He was also in good health. He wasn't on any medications, had no documented conditions, and showed no signs of dementia or cognitive decline. In 2011, to be closer to his daughters and grandchildren, he left Peru behind and moved in with them in Peñalolén, a commune in the metropolitan area of the Chilean capital, Santiago. In mid-March 2018, one of Fermín's daughters was due to celebrate her 25th wedding anniversary and wanted to do so in Lima, Peru, where a lot of her family still lived. It was meant to be a surprise, but Fermín found out, and he was adamant about joining her so he could visit the family as well. The tickets were already paid for, so Fermín had to buy his separately. And at the last minute, this also meant that on the return flight, Fermín would have to travel alone. He would also arrive before his daughter. Initially, that was a deal breaker, but the ticket taker for LATAM assured her that Fermín could have an employee assist him in getting around the airport, disembarking, navigating the baggage claims, and getting through immigration and customs for no extra charge. With that, her worries were put at ease. Their trip to Lima lasted 2 weeks, but now it was time for them to go home. Fermín's flight landed at Arturo Merino Benitez International Airport at 7 p.m. on April 2, 2018. His family members who remained in Chile were waiting for him at exit gate number 4 of the airport terminal, but he never arrived. Now concerned, they went to ask the airport staff, and they were quite unhelpful. They would restrict the family from entering certain areas to look for him, and wouldn't even tell them if Fermín's flight had arrived or not, stating that they couldn't give out any information and insisting that they just be patient. Unfortunately, Fermín didn't own a cell phone of his own, so he couldn't be contacted directly. Instead, they called his daughter on her cell phone before she even boarded her own flight to let her know. A flight from Lima to Santiago is nearly 4 hours, and she spent those 4 hours constantly worried about her father. When her own flight landed, Fermín was still missing. She then asked the airport staff what was going on, and they were just as obstructive. She wasn't allowed to enter certain areas, wasn't even told if the flight had landed yet, and was told to go to gate 4 and patiently wait for him. Eventually, the family decided to split up and search the parts of the airport where the staff wouldn't restrict them from entering. One of his relatives waited at the gate adjacent to the road where all the taxis parked to pick up passengers, but the airport staff had her kicked out since she waited so long that they felt she was loitering. With the airport seemingly doing all they could to not tell his family anything, they decided they would track down any passengers on that flight still in the airport and ask them directly about Fermín. They came across an elderly Colombian woman at the baggage claim area. Like Fermín, she was supposed to have an assistant, but instead, she was abandoned at the baggage claim and had been sitting in a wheelchair. Even if they don't need them, they are usually given wheelchairs regardless, for hours. Eventually, a security guard approached her and said, "You need to stand up and leave because they're going to be keeping you sitting here for hours." Fermín's family feared that if this woman had her assistant abandon her, the same was likely true for Fermín. Eventually, his family found an officer stationed at the airport and told him what was going on. He assured his family that he would look into the situation and went to speak with the airport staff. Knowing they couldn't exactly turn him away as easily as they did Fermín's family, they finally admitted that his flight arrived safely at its scheduled time. So naturally, the next question was where he had gone. They said that there was a problem with his luggage, so they kept him seated at the baggage claim in a wheelchair. According to them, Fermín was quite impatient, angry, and didn't want to wait. Eventually, he felt the wait wasn't worth it, stood up from the wheelchair, walked off on his own after his provided assistant left. The officer and his family wanted to check the CCTV footage. However, the airport staff were initially resistant and said they couldn't show them the footage because it was time for the staff's shift change. Of course, his family didn't consider that to be a valid excuse. and forced the issue until the airport staff finally relented. After reviewing the footage, they knew why the staff didn't want them to see it. They had been less than forthcoming. From the very beginning, Fermín had been unattended and had never waited in the baggage queue. Fermín approached the door leading to the street where all the taxi drivers were waiting, but rather than leaving, he turned back around, looking at all the people as he walked. Curiously, he was walking in the opposite direction from where his family would be waiting for him. He walked by some food stalls until he approached another door leading to the street. This time, he walked through the door and left the airport. A taxi driver briefly spoke to him, asking if there was anywhere he could take him, but Fermín declined his offer. At 7:30 p.m., he approached an unidentified man, likely an employee of either the airport or the various public transportation networks at the airport, based on his neon jacket. As this man has never been identified, nor has he come forward, we likewise don't know the nature of their short interaction. But as he pointed in a direction that Fermín quickly walked toward, he was likely asking the man for directions of some kind. The bus stop was in the direction the man pointed toward, and that seemed to be where he was going, as CCTV footage captured him waiting in line. Likely owing to how long it was, Fermín left the line and walked straight ahead until the CCTV footage could no longer capture him. This marked the last time anyone had ever seen Fermín. The direction he was heading in, provided he didn't change directions once out of the camera's view, would have brought him toward a sector near Route 68, a highway running adjacent to the airport that connects Santiago to Valparaiso. His family filed a missing persons report to the Carabineros, where it took 5 days for the report to be validated. During those 5 days, Fermín's family did their own investigation, printing and distributing several flyers and searching the land surrounding the airport, often having neighbors drive them around to help with their search. If something had happened to Fermín, his family didn't think it would take long for them to hear about it. As Fermín didn't have a cell phone of his own, and he was known to take long walks by himself, his daughter decided to make a credential that Fermín would wear around his neck that contained 2 of his relatives' phone numbers. So if something did happen, whoever found him would know who to call. In addition, Fermín was carrying his ID and passport, so if he were dead, his body would easily be identified. The family visited all the nearby morgues and hospitals to ask about Fermín, but he wasn't at any of them. The Carabineros also did little to help, often telling them to just come back if they had any proof he was in danger, and wouldn't even accompany them to any stores along Fermín's route to pull their CCTV footage. Something that Fermín's family saw as unusual, and pointed out how they felt the Carabineros weren't nearly as dismissive when it came to other missing person cases. Both the airport and the airline, LATAM, also issued statements in which they denied having any responsibility for Fermín's disappearance, and that they had followed all the proper procedures. In LAM's case, they said they laid all the blame at the airport and said their job was done once Fermín actually stepped off the plane. As for what that job actually was, they claimed the assistant walked Fermín over to customs, and afterward he indicated to them that he didn't require or want any further assistance, so they left to help other passengers. On April 7th, an official investigation finally took place, and instead of the Carabineros running it, it was taken over by the PDI. While the PDI added Fermín to Chile's missing persons database, they unfortunately didn't have any more luck in finding him compared to his family. On April 9th, witnesses came forward and reported seeing a man who looked like Fermín in the vicinity of the Pudahuel, Barrancas, and Pajaritos metro stations. But whether it truly was Fermín has never been verified. Another lead came from a security guard at a construction site near Route 68. After hearing this tip, the family visited the site and spoke to all the security guards on duty. There they stated that they had seen an elderly man matching Fermín's description on either the night of or another night after his disappearance. When the security guards approached the man and asked where he was going, he reportedly responded that he was heading to Mapocho. Mapocho could mean many things. The Mapocho River, Estación Mapocho, a cultural center station in downtown Santiago, or the Mapocho neighborhood. Once again, whether this man was truly Fermín or not has never been verified. His family hoped they might see him again once Fermín's pension came in, as he had memorized the days he would be paid his pension and would rush to collect them as early as possible. Unfortunately, Fermín's pension went unclaimed. Fermín's family believed that he might be homeless. Fermín only had 9,000 Chilean pesos on his person, which wouldn't be enough if he entered a taxi and asked the driver to take him home. They believed that he might have been dropped off in the middle of Santiago after the driver realized he didn't have enough to pay the fare, where a confused and lost Fermín became one of the many elderly homeless people on the streets of Santiago. Fueling their belief in this theory is the fact that his family actually found other missing elderly individuals during their search for Fermín, individuals who had that exact thing happen to them. If he's still alive, Fermín Delgado Pinto would be 92 years old today. Anyone with information as to his whereabouts is urged to reach out to his family or contact the PDI.